Hi everyone, Mike Lumio, Bushcraft Northwest, here today to talk to you about bushcraft knives. Now typically we're referring to fixed blade knives like this, but today's video is all about the folding knife and what features I look for, which will hopefully help you pick out a good one for yourself. So in order of importance, the first thing I look for in any knife is the handle shape. And what I'm looking for is basically something similar to like my Celilo here, right? It's got no sharp edges, no aggressive finger cutouts and finger guards. I've talked about that before, so I won't bore you with it. But basically, you know, the knife should feel good in all the various hand positions that you're going to use, and not raise calluses and hot spots and things like that on your hand. And so I'm looking for the same thing in folding knives, right? And so this was the folding knife I used for, I don't know, probably the last 7 years or so. It's a Bradley frame lock, and you can see it's the handle is very similar in shape to kind of that Celilo, right? It's rounded. It feels good in the various hand positions. This is my urban carry knife. This is the new knife by Spyderco. It's the Firefly, and you can see same kind of deal, right? Feels good in the hand. I can hold it in different positions. This knife is a little shorter because it has it's good for urban environments, and I like the red handle and various other things. But anyway, so you can see here, again, there's lots of knives that might fit this basic profile that's going to work for you, but where folding knives usually fail is in the thickness of the handle. Okay, so you can see both of these knives are fairly thin, and they're designed to fit in the pocket. But I want you to see the knife that I use as my bushcraft folder, and it's the Spyderco Niklaka, I believe is how it's pronounced. Look at the difference in thickness, okay, between your basic frame lock and this Spyderco knife. Okay, beautiful. That's what I want, right? It's similar. You can see it's not as thick as my Celilo is, but it's getting there. I mean, and that's what you want. It really feels good in the hand. Okay, so there's not a lot of folders that are thick like that, and so that's one of the reasons that I chose this knife, and I think you would like it as well. Now, one thing I want to point out, you know, I notice this a lot with Spydercos, and there's other makers that do the same thing, but a lot of these knives, you know, they're cut by, you know, lasers, and these lasers leave really sharp edges, and this one really bothered my hand, especially in this area down here. So I know it's hard to buy a $200 knife and then take sandpaper and stones to it, but you know, that's sometimes what you have to do. And I went through this whole knife, and I smoothed everything out, and the sharp corners here on the end, and I made it work for me. And you should do that with any knife that you buy, whether it's fixed blade or folders. So anyway, so that's the first thing, is handle shape. The next thing I look for is the lock and the opening mechanism. Now, locks are tested ad nauseum, I guess because it can be tested, and people make a big deal out of the different kind of locks. I don't really care all that much, to be honest. If it's made by a reputable manufacturer and it's a good quality knife, the knife is going to be plenty strong. I mean, let's be honest, the weakest part of the knife is not the lock, it's the fact that it's made in two pieces, and the pivot there is going to be the weakest spot of your knife. So frame locks, liner locks, all those are going to be fine. Like I said, if it's made by a quality manufacturer, it's going to have plenty of strength. But what I'm looking for is a knife that can be open and closed with one hand. All right, it's very important. If your folding knife can't be operated with one hand, then this hand's busy doing something, and when you're cutting, and then you're stuck with this open knife. All right, and you tend to either want to set it down, or again, you're walking around, and that's just not acceptable. You want to be able to be done and put it away easily. So that's what I look for. Frame locks, liner locks, both of those do those very well. In terms of the opening mechanism, I'm really gravitating towards the thumb holes more. I find that they're a lot easier to use with gloves if my hands are cold, more than the thumb studs. So that's another reason why I kind of went away from this, and why I really like this knife. And you can see, look how big that cutaway is there for the thumb hole. I mean, you can really get in there with gloves, no problem, and open and close that knife with one hand. Steel's the next thing that really gets a lot of attention. Again, I don't care all that much. You know, a good quality steel is what I'm looking for. I do tend to prefer stainless for my folders because I use them in a little bit different way. They tend to get stored in pockets, and a lot of times I will use it in really wet conditions. If instead of maybe getting my carbon steel knife out just to cut some cord or something, I'll use that knife. So it tends to stay wet a little bit longer, and for that reason, plus you have the pivot area and all that that can gather moisture. So for that reason, I look for a good quality stainless. This knife is S30V, which is fine. I mean, really, I don't stress all that much about it. But again, just a good quality steel. And again, I prefer something that is a little bit more stainless than my sheath knife. The last thing I'm looking for is the type of grind. Now, on my fixed blade knives, you can see there's my Celilo. This has a Scandi grind. You can see that big, flat, mirrored polished area there. That is the bevel, and Scandi grinds are great for fixed blades because it gives you a lot of strength behind that fine carving edge, right? You have a constant V going out, and that way it stands up to batoning and carving and twisting and that type of thing. Puts a lot of strength behind that fine edge. The downside of a Scandi grind is that look at all that steel that you have to sharpen each time, right? Well, as I mentioned before, the weakest part of your folding knife is going to be that pivot, right? This is made in two pieces, and so you're not going to be able to baton it and torque on it the way you can a fixed blade knife. So in my opinion, I think you lose a lot of what a Scandi does well with a folder, and you get a lot of the downside. Now, it's not a deal breaker for me. If I had the perfect knife and it was Scandi ground, I would use it. But I really prefer the flat grind myself. And I set the edge angle properly. If you've never seen my video about edge angles, check that out, and you'll see how I adjust my edge angles to perform the same way as my Scandi grind. I'm so conscious of that weakness there in folders that because I use my knives so much and I'm sharpening them all the time, that I modify my technique when I sharpen folders, and I try to isolate the blade, and I don't push down as much as I do with my fixed blade knives, because I'm usually hammering these knives when I'm trying to take that steel off, and that side motion is constantly flexing that hinge. Okay, and so I do try to isolate that a little bit, and that's another reason why I would prefer to work with a small secondary bevel than a big flat Scandi grind. A good folding knife is such an important tool. It's compact, it's portable, it's inconspicuous, and therefore something we're going to have on us all the time. So invest in a good one. Make sure you get something that you like and that you have confidence in. This Spyderco is, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but I am sure it's on our website along with the Celilo and the Firefly. If you want more information, you can go to bushcraftnorthwest.com. And thanks for watching as always. We'll see you again soon.